Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Before we get to these episodes, I want to thank the following sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com. Guys, I wanted to remind you that the GoHunt mapping app is now available for Android and iPhone users. The GoHunt maps are included in your insider membership. You can go to GoHunt.com/JScott and sign up for the GoHunt Insider. You're going to get a $50 GoHunt Gear Shop gift card just for signing up. So not only will you have the unbelievable assets of the GoHunt Insider with the draw odds, the statistics, the harvest data, all of the strategy articles, but now you're going to have desktop mapping. You're going to have the access to the mobile app. It's available on Android and iPhone. Guys, something new as well with GoHunt. Anything in the GoHunt Gear Shop, if you use the J. Scott promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount on some amazing gear. Guys, I want to remind you, if you have any optical needs at all, whether it be binoculars, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, tripods, anything to do with glassing, give my friend Cody Nelson at GoHunt a call. He's the optics manager. You can reach him at 702-847-8747. You can email him at optics@gohunt.com. You can also send him a text or call him on his cell phone, 602-399-3699. GoHunt.com also has the Summer of Elk Giveaway. In this giveaway, there's several ways to enter. You get 1 entry if you subscribe to GoHunt emails, 3 entries if you spend $250 in the GoHunt Gear Shop, 10 entries if you join the GoHunt Insider. This Summer of Elk giveaway is $15,000 in gear and a 2022 New Mexico rifle elk tag. The Summer of Elk giveaway started on June 14th and ends August 31st at 11:59 p.m. Go to GoHunt.com to sign up. I want to thank GoHunt.com for their continued sponsorship of this podcast. I also want to thank Kuiu. That's KUIU.com, Kuiu.com, Kuiu Ultralight Hunting. That is the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. Go to Kuiu.com to find out more. Also, phonescope.com. Use the J. Scott promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount. JScott21 promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount at phonescope.com. That's the digiscoping adapter that I use to take videos and photos on my iPhone. Guys, I want to thank you for your support of this podcast and support of the sponsors. Let's get right to this episode. Okay. Good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, good, Jay. How are you this morning?
Good. I'm excited to talk elk, man. We're a few days away. When do you leave to head for Arizona? A couple weeks?
Yeah, I'm planning on pulling out on September 3rd is when I'm thinking. Yeah, full week for the season.
You know, when we first talked this summer, what an amazing turnaround the monsoon has done there specifically in Unit 9, but in Arizona and all across the Southwest. Just curious your thoughts on, pretty bleak going into the season and probably when you first checked your trail cameras in Unit 9 to now, what your thoughts are with what you know now going into the season. How are things changed?
Yeah, Jay, it's a 180-degree turnaround. I am so encouraged now. I think it's going to be a great, great season. I think the rut's going to be good. We're getting great green up, water all over these units. It's going to be the kind of hunt that we've been, waiting for a long time. I can't think of a more active monsoon season since 1999 was the last one that I remember like this.
Yeah, so I mean, talk a little bit about with everybody listening how, monsoon might not affect antler growth for this year, but what it potentially means for the rut, what it potentially means for, carryover feed going into next year, just how important that is.
Yeah, it's great for all the wildlife, especially elk. Last year we really noticed that even though we had great antlers, without the feed, without these elk being healthy in the fall, the rut just didn't really happen. I don't feel like the cows cycled normally. Maybe they did a little later on, some of them, but during the archery and early firearms hunts, it was just really bleak. With these elk fat and slick and healthy, and these bulls are going to get to learn what it's like to wallow again this year, getting in ponds. I think it's going to be, it's going to be 180 degrees difference.
I noticed a couple of those great trail camera videos that you got where it looked like you had 12 or 15 bulls or so in one video. Really cool footage that you were able to capture down there. Curious your thoughts with the ban of the trail cameras. You and I will be fine because we'll go back to kind of how we always do it. But as far as just being able to gather really neat clips and get an inventory with trail cameras, is there a part of you that hates to see them go?
Yeah, I do, Jay, unfortunately. Like I've talked about before, I don't so much use them as a tool to kill elk with because it's very hard to do, really, unless you have an army of people to check them and keep tabs on them, and I'm just not an entourage kind of person. And, I mainly use them to get a barometer of antler growth for the year, just to kind of get an inventory of what the bull crop looks like, so I can give my hunters a realistic expectation of what to look for. And also it's super entertaining to watch, those bulls develop in the velvet, be able to see them on video, how they establish their hierarchy even during the summer, get to hear them hissing and grinding their teeth. It's just pretty cool to watch how they act toward each other. And I'm going to really miss that. I think it's unfortunate that, we're getting to maybe lose these.
Yeah. What's your take on Unit 9 antler growth compared to all the other years you've been in there? Where do you see it?
Yeah, so it's not going to compare to the last 2 years, where the last 2 years have kind of gone back to the old days as far as, just phenomenal bulls. Quite a few 350 plus bulls and some real special bulls. This year is, more of just a real average year. I'm surprised that it's not worse, to be honest. I do see some bulls that look like they're droughty, but then a lot of them that look just pretty unaffected. So, I think there's going to be, I know there's going to be real solid bulls out there. Not as many top-end bulls, obviously, as, last year or the year before, but I think it's still going to be a solid crop of bulls this year.
Steve, how is Elk Camp TV being received this season? I know you're midway through your season. How's it going?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to believe that this coming Monday, marks the 9th week of the show on Sportsman Channel. And there's actually, I'll tell your viewers and your followers that there is a calling-specific episode that's coming on this Monday. Talks about how I call to satellite bulls versus herd bulls, shows footage, and then some hunts mixed in there. A real entertaining and educational episode. So I would encourage anyone to follow along and watch that. It airs Monday evenings at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, so that'd be 5 p.m. for Arizona viewers. Of course, you can be part of the show. So, it's being very well received so far.
Fantastic. And guys, keep putting your questions down here. I'm going to scroll through them here in a minute and answer a bunch of questions. I've got a couple questions for Steve first and foremost. So, Steve, known you a long time. I think we met in 97, I think, something like that, when your dad was down in Arizona, had an elk tag. We've been friends ever since. You kind of came, and when I first met you, you were, into calling then. But talk about your, role as a guide, your what I would consider a calling guide, and how you're able to take that year after year and get better, and how you've improved your craft. I consider you the best elk caller on the planet. And I don't say that lightly. And it's not just because you're my friend. To me, you make the best wide variety of sounds of anybody that I know, from everything from cow calling to bugling. It seems like you've really mastered your craft. And gotten better. It seems like every year you continue to get better. I'm just curious, talk about being an elk caller and how that's kind of, over time kind of morphed into where you're at now.
Yeah, Jay, that goes clear back to the early 90s, when I was first inspired by guys like Wayne Carlton and Will Primos, I just love their drive and their passion for elk hunting, and so I got the bug from that. And then I remember it was actually 1995, not to date us too much, but that my dad had a early rifle tag, and that was a good year. That was another good moisture year. And I remember showing up, and I think I had a Lohman mouth reed, and I had one of those hyper hot cow calls by Woodswise. Remember that call?
Yeah. Sure.
I remember you were the one who first introduced me to the Primo's pallet plate mouth reeds. You actually gave me a black Sentry plate. I can still remember that. And man, that was the start to changing my calling right there, because you were already such a good caller right then, Jay, and I learned a lot from you and how you call. And so, yeah, that pallet plate was the biggest thing to come along as far as improving elk calls. And I've had a lot of time. I'll be honest, I don't feel like I'm a natural at it. I've just had a lot of time to spend, especially with some of my farming background. Spent a lot of time on a tractor, and it's kind of good practice. And what I always seek to do, even nowadays, is either improve upon a sound that I feel needs improving on, or try to figure out a sound that would maybe make me a little bit unique or set me apart out there in the woods. So I'm not just like the next guy when I'm out there calling to those bulls. That's what I really look to do. I always tell people, when you're actually out there calling to elk, focus on your strengths, but then in the off season, work on your weaknesses.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things with my calling. I kind of have basically one or two tricks, and I'm good at those. I feel like you have, just such a wide variety, but you practice and you practice all year long. And I think it shows in all of the different sounds. And later I'm going to have you demonstrate some of that, but let's go ahead and dive into a few of these questions here. Guys, like I said, continue to put your questions. I also have some that came in from Instagram earlier, and let's see here. September 10th, opening day. What's your go-to strategy when other guys head back to camp 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.?
I'd probably be there in camp with those other guys.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Maybe if I know there's not a full moon on the 10th. The full moon, I think, is it the 20th, Jay?
Yeah, 20th.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, in Arizona, if this guy's hunting in Arizona, which it sounds like he is, because he's talking about the 10th and that being the opener, I mean, there is a real marked shutdown in the bugling. And I found that even if you get in there and you dog a herd into the bedding area and you get in there close with that bull and his cows, and you're either, making bull sounds at him, or you're trying to cow call him over and you're pestering him a little bit and he's just not responding well to it, man, I say mark your spot there and back away. Even if you don't go back to camp, back yourself away from that and don't force the issue too much, because you can do more harm than good in a scenario like that, especially if you're out there, you don't totally know where the elk are at and you're tromping around and you don't have the wind right, things like that. So you can be as unproductive as you can be productive. So, save your energy for the prime time and make it count when the elk are bugling.
Yeah, I mean, I could see someone that's maybe in Colorado on an OTC hunt, and they're, back way in the back country, and they're trying to figure out what to do during the day. I might say, get within a couple 100 yards and maybe just do some calling and see if you can pull a bull, away. But I'm with you, Steve, in the fact that I feel like, so many people want to try and just go. And the reality is there's only a couple of hours during the day that you can work elk and not booger elk. The worst thing I think you can do as a hunter is just be all day long, just going and blowing elk everywhere. I mean, you're not doing a service to yourself or the other people in the unit that, you're just blowing elk all over and disturbing them. I feel like you would be better off to kind of rest up and then have a good game plan for the afternoon. Yeah. For sure. So we kind of see it the same way. We've got a question here. Rut predictions for Montana. Looks like a full moon during what would be the best week. We're planning on opening week hunt based on the moon. Finally starting to get some moisture here too. I wouldn't attempt to predict what's going to happen in Montana. I've only been there a couple of times. But I do know, with that full moon being on the 20th, you're probably going to have primetime activities probably going to be cut a little bit short because they're going to be up all night wanting to head to their beds first thing in the morning. Steve, you've hunted through full moons your whole life. What kind of strategy do you kind of take, or mindset do you take into a full moon when you're, bugling season, full moon hunting?
Yeah, I mainly try to really focus on making that first half hour of light be the best of the day. I mean, never miss a morning hunt at all, especially on a full moon, because that first 15 to 30 minutes can be all that you have in the entire day, because the afternoon hunt is really poor. So yeah, I want to be out there. Sometimes if I need to, I'll go out there in the middle of the night and locate pockets of bugling again so that I can be right on them first thing in the morning. And if you do get a bull bugling, I don't mess around with it. Sure, I try to get the wind right, or I do get the wind right, but I hustle in there and get right in there and mix it up quick, because it can shut down real fast on you. So you just got to take advantage of that prime time. And then occasionally they will have an active period during the middle part of the day when there's a full moon. But again, you got to be really cautious. If you go out there and they're not active, don't push it, because like you say, Jay, you can do more damage to your hunt than good. And pressured and pushed elk become less and less vocal, and it only makes it harder for you and everybody out there.
Yeah, for sure. That leads me to thinking about a question of afternoon hunts, whether it's full moon or just, maybe a little warm and dry. And what do you do on those days when, you're out there at, 3 or 4 in the afternoon and there's just nothing going on? And then as the afternoon progresses, it's just, you can just tell nothing's happening. But it seems like right at that last, almost right at shooting light, stuff starts to happen. How do you kind of prepare for that, and what kind of strategies do you use when you kind of feel like it's dead in the afternoon or late evening?
Yeah, Jay, I used to move around a lot during the afternoon, and I would call and move and stay mobile, and really that would work sometimes, but I felt like overall that was kind of a mistake, because what would end up happening inevitably, like you just talked about, is during the last 15 minutes or so of light is where I would get a bugle, and then I would think, this is a great spot because I got a bugle here. Well, it was just timing was all it was. So I've become less inclined to move around during the afternoon like I do in the morning. I am mobile in the morning, but in the afternoon, I like to be on a herd in the morning and mark them, and then be able to come back in the afternoon and get right in tight, obviously taking the wind into account. And, just be right there, and hopefully they chime up just a little bit and I'm close and I'm able to hustle in there and get on them. I really hate when I have to try to force the issue in the afternoon. If they're not vocal during, say, that last 30 minutes of light or something like that, I kind of use my instinct. But, I may try to pull something out of them that last little bit of light, although it's a toss-up as to whether it's going to work or not, because I always say when they're vocal on their own is when they're callable, and if they're not, it's very tough.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a question here. When within 200 yards of a bull, how often do you bugle if he's quiet?
Yeah, I definitely would not want to overdo that if I was within 200 yards of him, because if he's not reacting well to it, I'm not just going to continually force the issue on him. I'm one of these, take his temperature kind of people. I really, kind of base my calling off how they're reacting to me. And if he's not bugling back a lot, I'm probably going to go more quiet and stealth on him and really start listening for him, just to be making, little sounds or maybe raking a tree or something like that, and use that to my advantage. But I'm definitely, not going to go way vocal on him when he's not giving it back to me.
And I feel like, too, when you're, getting closer and in that 200 and inside, and he's clammed up or he's quiet, he's probably quiet because he has cows, and he's probably quiet because he doesn't really want you around. And I think that's one thing, Steve, you and I have spent a lot of time around elk and kind of learned that, when they're quiet for a reason. The other challenge is, like, if you're bugling and making all kinds of racket and he's quiet for a reason. He's probably not coming. I feel like a lot of times you get caught walking into a bull. And when they go quiet, it's kind of one of those things you either have to sit and wait for them to come to you, or move towards them. And more times than not, when you move towards them, you end up boogering them.
Yeah, because they're watching and listening. And if you've been calling, they're definitely paying attention to that direction where your calling was coming from. And yeah, like you say, when they're stationary and you're moving, 9 times out of 10, they're going to pick you before you see them. So yeah, it's a very sketchy situation to do that.
We've got a question here. Any tips for cow calling to locate bulls? This might be a good opportunity, Steve, for you to maybe demonstrate either with an external or an open read or with a mouth call, kind of what you would do if you're just kind of trolling, if you will, trying to locate a bull, and maybe what your sequence of timing of your call would be.
Yeah, so, I would tell guys, if you're not super comfortable on a mouth read, I tell guys all the time, you can call so many bulls in with an open read call. And I'll use both, but I'll use an open read call a lot to locate. I start out kind of just, I would say, a little bit conservative as far as calling. I'm not going to blow super loud in the beginning. I'm just going to blow something like this. I don't know how this is going to turn out, especially without my gloves on, Jay. But blow a couple calls like that. See if you get a response. Maybe if they don't call back, sometimes I'll even cup my hands and get both hands on it. Give it a little more volume, maybe a little higher tone, a little more emotion.
So is that like if you kind of are walking and you haven't really heard anything, but you kind of gotten to a spot maybe on a spine ridge or something where you've got a valley and you kind of feel like there should be some elk? You kind of walk to a spot like that and then project a little bit and then just kind of listen and see if anything, sounds off. And my question would be, in that scenario where you're calling like that, is it typical just to have kind of a faint, just I'm over here answer, kind of like, I'm bedded? And is that what you kind of expect? And if you do hear that, then what's your next move?
Yeah. If it's a little later in the morning, then that scenario you're talking about is really likely that they're just going to answer you and let you know. Typically what I'm going to do is then I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to move in and try to cut the distance down a lot. Now, I don't want to move in and bump him, but I'm going to move in and try to get within, say, 150, 200 yards. If he hasn't bugled again, then I might try to take his temperature again. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes they answer you and sometimes they don't. When I get in there closer, I'm going to try to be a little more subtle on the call, a little quieter with it, blow it away from him. I'm going to turn away and blow it the other way. If it's a little earlier in the morning, the bull might jump all over the call. Might be just what he wants to hear. And then you can move in and he's going to continue to be vocal. Again, I'm going to try to move in and get inside of that 120-yard range and cow call him right in.
Steve, hold that call up. I'm not sure if that was your trophy wife or a heartbreaker, but it looks like a trophy wife, I think. Talk about the shallowness of that soundboard, and that's where I feel like your open read calls. I try every elk call out there. I'm not biased to anyone. I'll try whatever I think's best, and your open read calls, in my mind, by far are and have been for many, many years the best. Why is that, shallow soundboard? And maybe that's not the right term, but it seems like I can make much better sounds on your call than any others.
Yeah, Jay, it's definitely a flat soundboard. If you're looking at it and you're looking at that Mylar reed, it's super close to that soundboard. I just feel like for elk sounds, in my experience, and like you, I'm not biased. I try all the calls that come out. I've just found that this flatter soundboard angle just tends to make more elky type sounds. It's got a more full 3-dimensional sound to it. They will easier on you. I will. So there's a couple of things like I've talked about in the past. You want to be sure and be getting the air from your diaphragm. They're just puffing it through your mouth. You're going to get less saliva. And then you want to keep this call up to temperature, keep it inside of a layer of clothing so it stays closer to your body temperature, and then it's less likely to condensate. But yeah, those are the keys to a good cow call.
And Steve, you have some great YouTube videos out there on you demonstrating that call, but also, since we have the ability to have visual here, show how you hold your hand specifically, and why that's important. And you've tried all the different things. Some guys really cup it. Why that's important, you feel, to hold it. I mean, I've tried to mimic and hold it exactly how you do as well.
Yeah, pretty much like this, Jay. I'm kind of putting it between my index finger and thumb. If I'm making the OK symbol, I guess you could say. I think you can describe it that way. And then I just keep my hand nice and loose. I don't want to be tense in any sort of way. And then same way with my mouth. I mean, I can feel myself tensing up a little bit right now because I know I'm on video, but I relax as I can, relax my mouth, bring the air up from deep down, and yeah, just like that. Sometimes I'll use my ring finger and my pinky finger. Like that, to just deflect the sound a bit.
Is there ever a time when you put your other hand in front to kind of just muffle it even more, or if you're trying to get soft, is there something specific you do there?
Sometimes I will, especially if I have gloves on. Yeah, I'll use my other hand. Yeah, and turning myself away and just thinking about bringing up real light air pressure to make the call quieter. You can really quiet it down when you need to.
Yeah. And a lot of times when they're coming and trying to pinpoint your location, you're also trying to kind of pimp them a little bit and not let them know exactly. You're trying to think you're further back so that they go ahead and come on by the caller, right? Or the hunter.
Exactly. Their depth perception is amazing. I mean, they can literally walk up and know the tree that you're calling from. They can come from a quarter of a mile away and know right where you're at. So, like you say, as much as you can, you want to try to fool that depth perception that they have by throwing the sound around and putting it behind you and off to the side.
Steve, got a couple questions here where your show is found, and then it also says, is it still on MOTV?
Yes.
Sportsman's Channel and...
Yes, it's on Sportsman Channel. So they're airing season 4 on Sportsman Channel right now. The best time to see the show would be Monday evenings at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Arizona time. They could also catch it on Thursday afternoons. I think it's on at 1:30 on Thursday afternoons. And then seasons 1 through 3, all 3 of those seasons are playing on My Outdoor TV. So they can go on to myoutdoortv.com. They can watch all 3 of the seasons. I think it's like a $9 or $10 a month subscription is all it is, so it's a lot less expensive, than cable. But a lot of content on there. I mean, more than my show. There's probably 500 high-quality shows on My Outdoor TV.
Okay. I got a question here. Should I even attempt any bugle calls on the Colorado public land, over-the-counter early archery, or stick with cow calls?
Oh, you're talking to a guy that through the years overall, I would say I'm a lover for the most part. Unless I know I'm dealing with a herd bull, I'm mainly going to be alcohol, most part. Unless you feel like when you're out there early in the season and the bulls aren't really cowed up and they're not really interested in your cow calls, then that might be a time if bulls are still raking and kind of establishing territory and that type of thing. Then some bugling and raking and that type of thing can work. Even chuckling and raking, that type of thing. But again, I want to emphasize stick with your strengths. If you don't feel like chuckling is something that you're good at, I would stick with raking, bugling. You don't even necessarily have to bugle. Sometimes non-vocal. We've talked about this before, Jay. Just raking can get bulls to. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be eliciting a sound.
Well, and I think too on over-the-counter Colorado hunts and heavily pressured hunts, if you're raking, a lot of times other hunters aren't hearing you as well, and you're the bull, anything that's within 100 yards or maybe a little more that can hear you, those bulls are probably going to come over. The curiosity always kills the cat, and it seems like they always want to know what's making that raking sound, especially when they bugle lightly at you or bugle aggressively and you don't answer. That's almost like a slap in the face of like, how dare you not answer me? So I think raking is one of the most underrated tools out there. We've got a question here. Rut prediction for Arizona archery this year, Unit 9 and 10. With moisture, moon phase, what do you think the best days will be this year? Steve?
Yeah, again, I think the rut's going to be strong, especially as the hunt goes along. I think we could have some bugling right at the beginning. It might get knocked down by that opening weekend push, so be ready for that. But I think guys could call bulls in right off the bat. I do think the rut's going to get stronger, especially as we approach, say, the 17th, 18th of the month. Said by biologists that most of these cows are going to have their estrus cycle around that fall equinox, which is on the 22nd, and the full moon is on the 20th. So I think right during that, I tell you, if I had to pick a week, right during that 18th to the 23rd, that last 5 or 6 days hunt, that's when I think it's really going to heat up. And then I believe that early rifle muzzleloader hunt is going to be phenomenal as well. But yeah, I think the best rutting activity, if you have to pick days, I would pick 17th, 18th into the end of the hunt.
I always say the 20th of September is when everything just goes crazy, and it seems like a couple days before that and a couple days after that. Obviously, it depends a little bit where you're at, but I mean, I think in general, all across the Southwest, New Mexico's gotten hammered with rain, Arizona's gotten hammered with rain, most of Colorado's gotten hammered with rain. The northern parts, maybe not as much. Idaho, I know, is dry. Montana's dry. But I think 9 and 10 are going to be bang-up years, a bang-up year this year. It would not surprise me with those guys with Unit 10 tags if they get out there and, 2-3 days before the season, they're already just tearing it up. But like you said, Steve, it seems like we always have a good opener on Friday, good opener on Saturday, and then Sunday seems like it just lulls out because they finally have been pressured enough, and it takes them a day or two to kind of get back in their rhythm. But I'm expecting just a phenomenal elk rut this year. Do you hunt in the rain or wait till it stops?
If it's a downpour, typically it shuts things down. I like to be out there, right afterwards. If it's a torrential downpour, it seems to me like it usually shuts them down, maybe for even a day or two. But I tell you, if it's a drizzle or just showering, absolutely, I'll go out there and hunt, because a lot of times that really lights them up. So yeah, I'm gonna pay attention, to whether it's a torrential downpour. If it is, typically that's going to shut them down. But yeah, if it's drizzling or showering, it can really get them going even in the afternoon. Awesome.
Yeah, it seems like midday, if you just have those light showers, it gets them up out of their bed and they're checking their cows and moving around. But I'm the same way. I mean, we've been in Unit 9 in different camps texting each other like, it's a toad strangler, and like, for 3 days, nothing's going to happen because we got 2.5 inches of rain, and it just kind of, I don't know why, but it seems in Arizona, it just shuts them down when you get those big rains for sure. Got a question here. How many calls or sounds are you making in a typical encounter with a bull you're wanting to call in?
Yeah, I tell you, most of the time I am sticking with what is working. I'm not changing things up. So, I may use different sounds in different scenarios, but in a particular setup, I'm usually going to be pretty much a one-trick pony. Like if I'm blowing an external cow call and that bull is eating that up, I'm not going to change a thing. I'm going to keep giving him what he's liking. I'm not going to throw in a bugle. I'm not going to glunk. I'm not going to change to diaphragm, cow call, I'm just going to give them what they want. So that's how I've been successful for all these years, is just stick with what they're liking.
Don't you think, Steve, with all the amazing content out there and information that people are able to gain with all the different styles of elk calling and whatnot, don't you think that people in general, what I at least hear out there, is they try and get really way too cute, and you know, it's instead of just being kind of like a one-trick pony and seeing what they want, they just give them everything, give them the whole kitchen sink. I hear it all the time. Yeah. And it just seems to push the elk away.
Yeah, Jay, I would agree. It just seems like being an elk factory out there doesn't seem to be what works for me anyway. I think stick to what's working. Don't try to call like you would during a calling contest. I know that's what they're calling contest. It doesn't out there in the woods. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's a better elk caller, Scott or Chappell, from Ryan Wampler? That's a no-brainer, Chappell. For sure, way more sounds for sure. Not even close. Can you explain how and when to use the Asterisk call?
Yeah. I am still pretty shy overall about using that sound because it's a super aggressive sound. The first thing I want to say about it, Jay, is I want people to know that I don't think it's a sound that is just limited to the rut. Cows make this sound throughout the year, especially when they're in the summer with their calves. I saw a video that you posted where you can hear them making that sound. But I believe during the fall, when they're in heat, that there's a different level of intensity of that sound. And you don't just hear it in the screamy part of the call, but you hear it in their mew. Their mew has a really whiny, almost desperate sound to it. That cow that I videoed in 3C, again, if you watch that footage, you see she's not only making that screamy sound, she's also mewing as well, but it's got a really wavy, real kind of desperate sound to it. And I feel like that's the added element that you don't hear during the summertime. Now, whether it's a true estrus sound or not is up for debate. All I'm saying is follow along with someone who knows how to make that sound fairly well, and it works, regardless of what you want to say it is. Whether you want to nitpick at whether it's a true estrus sound or not. My cousin Gary Stanley would attest to it. He's been with me, and he tells me, Steve, I would say 80% of the time during the rut, when you blow that call on an evening hunt, when nothing is happening, nothing is going on at all, and you start trolling and making that sound, 30 minutes later, we got bulls running into our lap. So yeah, I say results speak for themselves, regardless of what this sound is supposed to mean. When you have bulls coming in running, it obviously means something good to them. So,
and for sure, I mean, us as humans, there's really no way for us to say exactly what each sound is and exactly what it means. But what you're saying, and I've seen you do it myself, it works, and it brings those bulls in, and they know what that sound is. So regardless of exactly what the sound is, they know what that means. Or they think they know what that means because they tend to come in, and they come in hard, and they come in fast.
At the very least, it's a very demanding, come to me now sound. At the very least, I would say. And it does get results. And I'm mainly using it. I don't really use it as my go-to, especially in the mornings. 2019, I can think of one scenario where the bulls weren't bugling, and I thought I always use it in the scenario where I have nothing to lose, Jay. I don't ever use it as my first line of attack, and maybe I should. But a lot of times, I'm guiding all the time, and so I feel just a little strange just ripping that call out and walking around hammering it because I'm thinking, what is my hunter thinking right now? Screaming like a chimpanzee. But on the morning in 2019, nothing was going, so I thought, hey, this guy can't say anything because nothing's happening. So I literally did. I turned to him and I said, pardon me, but I'm going to blow this estrus call all the way back to the truck. and we had about a half a mile walk back to the truck. And I bet I hadn't walked 200 yards doing that sound about every time my left foot hit the ground. And a bull chimed off at it about 500 yards away, and we ended up calling that bull in and shooting at that bull at 25 yards that morning. Whereas I feel otherwise we would have never even known he was there.
Can you demonstrate that call? Do you have a mouth call there?
I do. I'll probably absolutely butcher it, but this call to me takes a ton of confidence and being relaxed, kind of deep down in your stomach and, getting that air from deep. But let me see if I can. That's pretty much it right there, Jay. And when I do that, by contrast to when I'm calling with more regular cow calls or an external call, I blow that call a lot when I'm moving in toward bull. Mm-hmm.
So you're actually when you're going to a bull, you're blowing that call, and you're just blowing it. Are you blowing it in recession or in repetition, just like that, just over and over, and you're going right at them?
Pretty much, yeah. Then I become, from being that kind of more conservative caller to being that more obnoxious loudmouth, if you know what I'm saying. I'm that chick that's a loudmouth at that point. And I found, Jay, that if I quiet down or I stop and try to keep making that sound, usually it causes the bull's temperature to go down. But I found if I keep moving toward him and making that sound, he's coming at me, I'm coming to him, and I've got to pretty much pick the right time to have that train wreck, if you will, and set up at just the right moment, right at the last, and have him come right in. Yeah.
Do you feel like not using that call is something you choose because, if you were just by yourself and no one else was with you, do you feel like you would probably use it more? In other words, are you a little shy to use the call, and why?
Yeah, Jay.
Because before you answer, because if 99.9% of the guys could actually make that sound, that's all they would make. So I'm just kind of curious why you're hesitant to use it.
I don't know why. It's kind of strange. And you just reminded me, that's how I killed my bull in 2010 in 7 East. Yeah. Super tough, not vocal, not much bugling at all. I had done kind of just my normal calling sequences, the hunt. I'd called in several bulls, but nothing, really big. I'd kind of set my standard at 340, 350, even though it was a tough year. And I was willing to eat my tag if I didn't see a bull that I really wanted to shoot. And it was evening of the 13th day, and I got a bull to bugle back to me with a bugle, but then he completely shut down as we approached him. He didn't make another peep. And we got up fairly close to him, and I didn't know at the time if he was a herd bull or what. And I tried cow calling to him. He didn't answer. I tried bugling to him. And my cousin Gary was with me videoing, and he says, "Steve, start blowing." He calls it the sludge cow call. He said, "Pull that thing out and start blowing it." He goes, "What do you have to lose?" And I looked at him and smiled, and I said, "You're right, man." So I just started walking in the direction where I thought that bull was at and started blowing it. And I'm telling you, Jay, he lit up. And he probably bugled, I would say, half a dozen times easily as I approached, cut the distance down about 150 yards. I could tell he went from not talking to screaming his head off, chuckling aggressively, glunking, and came up to 25 yards. And it was just dramatic how it changed. And he was a herd bull. He actually, when I got in tight, he just left the cows and just came right into it.
Yeah, it's a heck of a call. But I feel like, I even watched the World Championship elk calling contest and stuff, and there's very few people that can actually make what I feel like, what I've heard with my own ears and some of the things that I've been able to video, and then the cow you videoed in 3C. Yeah, heard very few people that can actually make that exact sound. So I think, I think that's one of the challenges is people think they know what that sound sounds like, but I wish all of them would listen to exactly how you're making that sound, because you're the only person I've found that can make it more spot on to the actual sound that we know. I don't know. It seems like if more elk callers would really concentrate and figure out how to do that call, they would be a lot better off.
Yeah, Jay, I would say no doubt. It's the hardest call to learn that you're going to try to master. And so, yeah, I wouldn't go out there and just use it indiscriminately. I would really want to feel like I've mastered it before I do it. And even for me, sometimes like I'm sweeter on it than I am other times. And again, I think it's all about, my confidence level at the time. And if I feel relaxed or not around my hunter or whoever's with me. So yeah, again, I wouldn't use it as a go-to call unless you feel super confident in how you're sounding on it. You're going to be way better off, just blowing, regular cow calls on a mouth reed or an open reed call, rather than throwing something out there that you're not super strong at.
Do you mind, there's kind of two parts of that call. There's the high pitch and then there's the raspy, if you will. If you were going to give someone some advice on how to make that call, I would assume you kind of have to master one piece and the other piece and then blend them together.
Yeah.
Could you at least maybe talk about that or try and demonstrate maybe how someone could get better at that?
Yeah, Jay, you're right. There's kind of a growly part, and I would say that I get that. You can either get it by vibrating your lips as you're blowing through the call, like this. This is kind of how I used to do it. Okay. Now I'm more so inclined to use my vocal cords, and I kind of hum through my vocal cords as I'm blowing the call, more like this. And I think I almost kind of blow it out of the corner of my mouth when I do that part of the sound, okay? And then usually what I do is I'll start the call with that growly part. I'll do some just growly calls like that, but then as I'm doing the growl, I push it into that higher tone and stop humming with my vocal cords like this. So it has that growly, real depth, deep element, but then it also pushes into that real high, kind of excited tone as well.
Yeah, awesome, man. Got a question here. Common mistakes made around big bulls. Common mistakes people make around big bulls.
Yeah, I would say probably the most common mistake. I think you can be too passive, obviously, so I don't want to miss talking about that. You can be too passive and just sit back. I've seen people set up with their face mask on, arrow knocked and everything. A bull's bugling a half a mile away, and he's obviously pushing into the wind and going away from him. They're expecting an imminent encounter. But then I've also seen people who are just too aggressive and they don't take the wind into account. They don't take the bull's temperature and see if he's reacting well to what they're putting out there, if they're calling at him. I would just say, really, really put your elk brain into action and use your instincts. If your instincts are telling you, hey, he's not reacting well to this call, he's not bugling back to it. You might want to either try something different if he doesn't react well to that, and if he's pushing away, leave him alone. I've had lots of encounters where I'll call a herd bull in. We don't get the bull killed, and he moves away with his cows. I think most people's first reaction would be to pick up and chase that bull. Usually my reaction is to leave him alone. I feel like once I've called him in that morning or that evening, I want him leaving not knowing really what happened, because I feel like that gives me an opportunity to call him in another time, especially using a different call in a different scenario. So, I'm not going to over push the issue.
I'm hunting a limited entry unit with lots of public surrounded by private. Would you hunt the center of the unit or would you hunt the borders of the private?
You know, it's kind of amazing how elk understand sanctuary. I mean, no matter where you're at, whether it's next to a national park, an Indian reservation, private land, they seem to understand about sanctuary. So I would say no doubt, you know, that viewer would probably have action around the borders for sure. So I would say absolutely check that out and don't rule that out. But then again, you know, there's obviously going to be elk in the center of the unit as well. Sometimes it can get frustrating hunting the borders because, again, those elk understand that. And in the mornings, they're going to be racing for it. So you're playing a race to the fence line, so to speak. And then in the evenings, a lot of times they're going to hang back. They're going to stay on the private side where you can't hunt them, and they're just going to tease you with bugling and not come over the fence many times. I know, Jay. Yeah. I know you called a bull in Unit 1 years ago over the boundary and into the unit, and your hunter took it. I've done that as well. So it is possible, but it can also be frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, that was with Doug Jenkins in 2002, a real bad drought year. We were in Unit 1, and we were just trolling the fence of the White Mountain Apache, and cow called and a bull answered as far onto the reservation as you could possibly hear a bull and still hear him. And I said, let me see what I can do, and I just started getting after him with the cow call, and the bull really liked it, and you could tell he was coming, so I kind of backed off, and Doug kind of backed off, and I said, whatever you do, he's got to cross that fence. He's got to come over on our side. You know, he's got to be on our side. And that bull came, and I just gave him a little, and he bugled, and I could tell he was closer, and he kept coming, and he'd bugle, and I'd shut up and not answer him every 2 or 3 times. And he came all the way. He got right to the fence. I'm back watching Doug. The bull's got his head over the fence, looking both ways. I'm thinking he's not going to jump. He jumps over the fence, gets on, our side, and is standing there looking around, and Doug just hammers him and, called the bull right off the White Mountain Apache. But one thing I will say is, at the '06 ranch since 17, I've been there, and people just hunt all around the perimeter of the fence, and I kind of just cringe because I know that those elk know exactly where the private line is and where the fence is, and they know where the pressure is and they know where the pressure isn't. And I feel like if people would actually just go hunt somewhere where they don't have to worry about private, then they can just go hunt. I see so many people wasting their whole hunt hunting on our border when those elk, they know exactly where there's no pressure and they're not going to get messed with. As soon as they go over the fence, they get harassed. And I just feel like if it were up to me, I would probably choose to hunt in the center of the unit where you don't have to deal with the private and just go mess with elk that you're following them and boom, they jump the fence and you're done. I mean, they'll answer you across the fence, but they're not coming very rarely. So, I mean, my advice to the guy would be I would go find some great elk habitat in the middle of a unit where you don't have to mess with private.
Yeah.
David Blanton from Realtree. Hey, Jay. Hey, Steve. Awesome info. Good to see you, David. Danny Ender. Best external read sound for calling cows, Unit 3C specifically. I think Danny has a cow tag in Unit 3C. Is there any sounds that you would make different if you're just hunting cows?
Yeah, Jay, in that scenario, I would say overall calf calling would be your most effective sound at that time. Mature cows can get jealous and defensive of their herd and of their herd bull, and they don't always necessarily want to be social with other mature cows. So I feel like a calf call is always a winner. Elk are always curious about what's going on, especially if that calf call sounds, maybe a little bit desperate or worried or whatnot. They'll come running in and check it out. Absolutely. And a calf call is shorter. I feel like I can do it better on a mouth diaphragm, but it's just kind of a sharp, high pitched. something like that. It's higher pitch, sharper, shorter. Yeah.
Yeah, and Steve, it's also when you're blowing calf calls, not only does the mom, want to know where's my calf at, and a lot of times she'll come, but don't you find that other cows are defensive of and want to also gather up calves even if they're not theirs? So I mean, calf calling, to me, excited calf calling is very effective when you're trying to get a cow to come to you.
Yeah, I totally agree, Jay. Yeah, they are very defensive of those calves, whether it's their calf or not. I'll tell you an interesting story really quickly. I remember one time sitting at a water source with a guy on an evening hunt, and I always try my best, if the elk don't come in during shooting light, to get out of there so you're not spooking them before dark. But we just got trapped in there that night. They just came in at just the wrong time as we were getting ready to leave. And rather than just getting up and blowing them out of there and letting them see us, I whispered to my hunter and the guy that was there videoing, I'm gonna coyote call at him. And I tell you what, Jay, what happened next surprised me. When I coyote yipped down, those cows actually, but aggressive. They were going to get that coyote out of there. I'm not saying go out there coyote yipping to try to call a cow in, but it's pretty amazing to me. I definitely learned something that evening, that they don't always run away from that. Yeah, pretty crazy how they got defensive about it.
Yeah. Someone says, how do you make a glunking sound? And I would ask you, Steve, I don't know if you have a tube there, but how do you make a glunking sound, and why and when would you use that sound?
Yeah, I'm pretty cautious about using that sound. I don't use it a lot. But again, like we were talking about earlier with raking, sometimes this can be a good sound rather than blowing a full-on bugle. I'm not going to use glunking if I'm blowing cow calls and a bull's coming to it, or I've blown, that lip ball bull calling cows bugle. I'm not going to mix in a glunk. But let's just say, I want to make something that's, non-vocal on a call, but I'll use my grunt tube. I'm not skilled enough to do it with my voice, but I just use my hand, and I just kind of cup my palm like this, and sometimes you can even on the other end. Every grunt tube is different. I wouldn't say this is my Rogue tube. I think it's phenomenal for making bugling and chuckling sounds. I wouldn't say it'd be my first pick for glunking. Maybe something with a little more open end on it for glunking. Yeah, that's how I get with my palm.
So I just got one of those tubes, and I was really impressed with that tube and the sounds. I'm excited to have it this year with me at the ranch. It took you a while to kind of design that and figure out exactly what you wanted in a tube. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Jay. It seemed like it was always, kind of have it one way or the other. You could do good lip balling sounds with a tube that had a wide mouthpiece, and then you could make better chuckles and high-pitched bugles with tubes that had a real narrow mouthpiece. Well, I feel like we kind of bridged the gap with this call by basically it's a have your cake and eat it too bugle, if you will. It does have a narrow mouthpiece, but then
Let me see that. I can't quite see that.
See that, Jay?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. You can see the narrow mouthpiece is the blue part, but then the lip ring that we incorporated into the call gives you that wider opening so that you can get your lips in there and make those lip ball sounds. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I used to, with those narrow mouthpiece calls, I would literally have to pull the call away from my mouth so that it would vibrate and not stop my lips from vibrating. But now you don't have that problem, so you can. Like that. Yeah, really allows you to get there and flutter them.
So you specifically asked them to make you, you wanted it narrow in the middle, but you wanted the wide so that it gave you room to allow your lips to vibrate and not have to pull the call back?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't, the cool thing is you don't lose that depth and three-dimensional quality that I liked so much out of a call with just the narrow mouthpiece alone. I thought maybe when we incorporated this lip ring that we might lose some of that three-dimensional quality, but it still has it. And this lip ring, by the way, is removable for a guy who doesn't prefer it. You can pop it off of the call. So,
Okay. Steve, I've got a question. Real fast, zero hunt fees. Explain to anyone listening, and then we'll get back to elk. Zero hunt fees.
yeah, so very simply, Jay, I say it's just an alternative way to cover the cost of a guided hunt. And it works very well for a lot of people who maybe don't have $6,000 or $7,000 laying around to cover the cost of a hunt. Or if they're a married guy, it's way easier to get spousal approval for zero hunt fees. When it's $349 a year, it covers the cost of your guided hunt. If you draw a tag, there's no minimum amount of years you have to be in the program. So if you're that lucky guy who draws the very first year, or in 3 or 5 years, I don't make you stay in the program to pay off your hunt. So it's a win-win scenario for most guys. I'm offering it to residents and non-residents alike. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's a way for guys to make good elk hunt way more affordable. You know, I can think of so many things that people blow $350 in a year on, and just your elk hunt. This is your premium that you're paying towards your guided elk hunt. That's it, very simply in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's been super successful, and you've had a bunch of guys draw tags and get a great guided hunt. So I encourage people to check that out. Got a question here. I have a big bull that's not very vocal. He wrote local, but I think he means vocal. What's the best way to get him in?
Yeah, a bull like that, if he stays not vocal, you've got to try to work tight within his circle, so to speak, and get him to make a mistake. Because typically, if you're in really close, Jay, like you were talking about earlier, some bulls with cows are defensive about it and they're very vocal. Other bulls aren't. And it sounds like, you know, if he's talking about a scenario where they're not, that's when you've got to be in there, and you got to be inside of that zone and live in there, like inside of 120 yards, obviously without getting winded and not getting picked. But, you know, those kind of bulls are still going to cycle around and go around the perimeters of their herd. They're going to mill around and move around. And, you know, if you're in there living in his kitchen, so to speak, and in that scenario, not giving away your location by calling, a lot of times that's when a bull's going to make a mistake. I mean, we know guys like Randy Ulmer, our friend Dark Holburn, who are super stealth and get it done that way. I mean, not just once in a blue moon, but all the time when they have a tag. You know the big bull's going to go down, and they do it by not being vocal and not, you know, there's a time to call and there's a time to crawl, just depending on the scenario.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, got a question here that came in on Instagram. It said, you make a bunch of different cow sounds. Can you walk through, you've already demonstrated what you're calling the estrus call or the excited call. Can you walk through some of the basic calls from just a basic cow call, and then how you kind of ramp and have different, like you have a wide variety of cow calls where I feel like I'm kind of a one-trick pony. Can you demonstrate some of the different cow calls that you use throughout a hunt?
Yeah. So I'll do this on a mouth read, and again, hopefully I sound okay. But yeah, you heard me do the estrus call. You've heard me call on an external call. This is how I would more call on on a read call, just more of a standard cow call, like this. And I learned from you, Jay, I don't open my mouth probably as wide as you do, and that's probably a fault of mine, but I still feel like I blow the call with an open mouth. Now, I can blow it with a more closed mouth to quiet it down and get different, you know, I can. Okay, if I'm out there and I'm trying to locate a bull in the morning with a mouth diaphragm, I'm going to call kind of like I am right here, just. just like that. And you and I both, Jay, I think we're more about quality sounds than we are about quantity. So we're not just going to blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Okay, so that's kind of how I just do just what I would say is a standard cow call. Now the calf call, which I demonstrated a little earlier on the open read, is going to be more like this on a mouth call. More like that again, higher pitch, sharper, shorter. Okay, and then I'll go into more emotional cow calls if I feel like I need to put a little more emotion out there to elicit a response, and it's more like this. I'm just pushing it into a little higher tone with a little more tongue pressure. Versus.
You're holding the high note just a little bit longer. You're keeping the pressure and the tongue pressure on the reed a little bit longer, maybe a second and a half longer, and it's carrying it out a little bit more, which kind of makes it project out and brings a little more emotion to it, right?
Exactly. And I just like you said, Jay, I'm just laying on it a little longer with my tongue pressure. I'm keeping my tongue pressure on the reed a little longer, and I'm keeping my stomach tight for a little longer and keeping that pressure coming, that air pressure coming across the reed. And you can tell that there's no air leakage on the call. So when you're picking a mouth reed, it's very important to pick one where you're not getting that sound of air escape reed. You're getting a nice seal like that, because that's how you can get those real tight, sweet, high-pitched sounds.
And then the next step would be then going into what you were demonstrating before and the other call where you're just really getting after it. Demonstrate that
Asterisk type sound.
Yeah, just kind of that just
Buzz,
intense, like, yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. And you have to get the reed a little bit damp, I want people to know. Dampen it up a little bit. I feel like when you're doing that call right, Jay, and you're in the groove, you even have a little bit of spit flying out of your mouth. You want damp and a little bit wet. It sounds better. Yeah.
Steve, when you've gotten to that point where you're blowing that call, have you had reactions from multiple bulls coming from different directions, kind of like your video in 3C where that cow was making that sound and they were just coming? And have you had cows? Have you had cows come to that call?
I have had cows come to the sound, yes, but it seems like more so, 9 times out of 10, it's bulls coming to the sound, even if they're leading their cows and sound. Yes, and I have had multiple bulls. I've had as many as 4 bulls converge on it at the same time. I could specifically think about hunting with a Unit 9 muzzleloader hunter one time. And literally, like I said, we got set up right at the last second, and 4 bulls converged on us right at the same time, and it was like, which one?
Someone asked, how do you get the buzz specifically?
Yeah, I think you can do it 2 ways. You can do it with your vocal cords. Let me. Oh. Is how I would do it without the call in my mouth. With my tongue pressed up against the palate, the top of my mouth, is kind of what it sounds like. I'm not saying anything into the call, but that's the sound it makes. And then if someone has a hard time with that, I feel like you can do it with your lips well also, and that's like that. And that's how I did it in the beginning, and when I hear it now, I really think it sounds good that way too, with your lips. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. Steve, you've been gracious to spend a little over an hour here with us. I want to thank you for your time. Before we go, you're going to be spending the majority of your time in Unit 9 in Arizona. Is that right?
Yes, Jay. My favorite unit, oh gosh, I tell you what, it has been such a turnaround like we talked about earlier. I'm so looking forward to it. Anybody with an elk tag this year, it looked bad in the beginning, and I know people were considering turning tags in, but man, 100% turnaround. So it's going to be an amazing year, I think.
Yeah, and then Steve, year after year, after elk season in Arizona, you get to go back to you and your dad's place there in Colorado, private property, and where you get to almost go from full rut to full rut. And I think that's what's made you so good as well, is because you've been able to hear elk every day for, all of September, and then pretty much the first 2-3 weeks of October. I want to end on being able to hear elk. I get to do that too at the @6, for 45 days and just listen to them. How do you feel like that really helps you become a better elk hunter, a better elk caller, and understanding, how to make quality sounds?
Yeah, Jay, I think it's everything. I think it's, I feel really blessed to be able to do that. And, ever since I was young, and, I attribute that to my dad raising me that way, and then including me in the hunting when I was in my early 20s, when I didn't know much at all, but was still, hungry and learning. But you're right. The more that you can hear live elk and tune your ear into that. I feel like I do that every year, Jay. I don't know about you, but I feel when I get out there and hear real elk, I kind of go, oh, okay, that's what I need to sound like, and it kind of changes me a little bit every year. I feel like that's super valuable for guys who can't hear live elk a lot. I think your material, Jay, is extremely valuable. I mean, you're posting content all the time where you've got live elk, on trail camera and whatnot. You've got that going on. So I would encourage the viewers and listeners to really key into those trail camera videos and your content, and really tune their ear to those elk sounds. And I feel like also not only the sounds, but pick up on that tone and emotion in the call. It really is meaningful, that emotion that you're putting out there.
Yeah, I think the more you can listen to the real thing, the better off you are, and understanding the cadence and the timing and the tonal quality and some of that different thing that we talk about. Steve, it's always great having you on the podcast and on Instagram Live here, and I know people get a lot of value out of it, and continue to do great work with your TV show, and with you build some great calls, and with the zero hunt fees, and the guide service, Chappell Guide Service. They're going to have a big year this year. You're going under the name Elk Hunt TV Guide Service, is that right?
Elk Camp, yeah. Since
Elk
we're
Camp
Elk
TV.
Camp, I just thought it was a better match, to go with the theme Elk Camp Guide Service. I think it's kind of nice for my guides too to not have to wear a hat that has my name on it. You know what I mean? I think Elk cooler for them to get to wear the hat that says Elk Camp Guide Service. So yes, moving forward, we're kind of transitioning into that.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your time with us, buddy. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Jay. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for this opportunity. And thanks to all the viewers and listeners out there, guys. I want to wish you all the best on your hunts this year. It only comes around once a year, so make the most of it and enjoy it.
All right, buddy. God bless. Take care.
God bless. Thanks, Jay.
All right.
Guys, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. If you want to send me a direct message, you can do so on my Instagram account, which is @jscottoutdoors. You can also send me an email at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. I appreciate all the feedback on the podcast, and I look forward to hearing from you. GoHunt.com Insider has Filtering 2.0, where you can get draw odds, strategy articles, species and unit breakdowns, and unbelievable gear giveaways. Did you know that they actually have a point system where you get 11% back to the consumer for using points for every dollar spent? Also, a new addition is the mapping, Go Hunt Maps. You have the desktop version, you have the mobile version for iOS and for Android users. There's never been a greater value for the Go Hunt Insider. Check them out at gohunt.com/JScott.